Un, deux, trois, quatre.
Look, I don't have time to fart around with a theme music. I have got a comic book video to do a little bit later. So, I'm not just going to sit around here and waste a bunch of time. I'm kidding, of course. I picked my nose before I started. All right. First thing, we have Plan 59 from Outer Space by people I've never heard of and a publisher I don't know. Is it Oso? Is that the name of the publisher? I guess we'll find out together. Thrill as he looks up things. I honestly cannot tell what this publisher is called. It hardly matters. This is a very small indie book that is a direct reference to the 1959 classic science fiction film by Edward D. Wood Jr., Plan 9 from Outer Space. And from the solicit that I read, this takes place about 50 years in the future, or 50 years after Plan 9, and the aliens have tried to invade 50 more times. And this might be the one that actually works. I don't know if you're familiar with the oeuvre of Ed Wood, or if you're even familiar with the Johnny Depp movie, which I find whenever I bring it up, people don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, all right. Lando only won an Oscar for it, but you've never seen Ed Wood. Okay. It's the only biopic I really like, I think. There might be one other one, but anyway. I love Ed Wood, and I love Plan 9 from Outer Space. Plan 9, to me, is the original worst movie of all time. Like, I believe it was the Golden Turkey Awards, written by the Medved brothers, and they named Plan 9 the worst movie of all time. And that was in 1980. And then Drew Friedman drew a bunch of comics about it, and it made me love it even more. It's a very bad movie. There definitely are much worse movies out there, like modern movies. I mean, I would rather sit through Plan 9 than like go see this Barbie movie, although I might get stoned enough to go see that. So I have a bunch of other, like Plan 9 they'll try to do comics of Plan 9 every now and again, and it never works. It's always been a cult thing, but I don't even know if it's that. I was thinking the other day how, like, now that I'm in my late 20s, I've thinking how out of touch I am with the youths of today. And I'm completely fine with that. I want to make that clear. But you can't help but be a little bit like a little FOMO, as they say nowadays, stupidly. And I would, whenever this would happen, whenever it would be made clear to me that I was out of touch with whatever is hip or popular, I would think, well, I was hip and cool when I was a teenager, which is what every old fart does. It's the first one since Methuselah. But and they're almost always wrong. But in my case, I couldn't be more wrong. It was never fucking cool. There was probably a window, I want to say, from like 93 or 4 until about probably, let's say, the turn of the century for ease, for convenience's sake, where I might have been. In that 7 to 6 year span, that was my highest potential for being cool. And that was when the weird, obscure shit that I knew about had any chance of impressing anyone, especially anyone of the gender I'm attracted to. But the end of that window was over 2 decades ago. I haven't been into anything relevant since then. Here's something. This is definitely, I'm already going on too long. I love the punk rock music, but instead of going to the record store every week, I go to Bandcamp every week. Because I don't know if you know this, when you go to Bandcamp, there's not some asshole in a ponytail looking down his nose at you for what you're buying, while simultaneously playing the shittiest music. That was on the sidebar. I've never understood how you could work in a record store. maybe that's it. Maybe they work in a record store for so long. They're like, I'm going to put on Lawrence fucking Welk until everybody gets out of here. And let me tell you, works like a charm. So I don't think punk is really that cool anymore. It's not like it was when I was a kid. That's that thing too, where like I came into punk rock in the '90s when it was very much the second wave, and all the old farts are like, you kids won't be around. Come see me in 2023. And yet here I am. So go fuck yourself. But anyway, there are a lot of bands these days, a lot of punk bands, especially the ones that I like, and they're all teenagers. They're all in high school, most of them, I think. They're all into cassette tapes. Have you ever heard of such a thing? This is the exact reaction my parents had when I started collecting records when I was 16. Records? Who the hell listens to records anymore? The difference, though, to me anyway, I truly don't get why they like the cassettes. But where was I going with that? I think there will come a time when something like that, something else like that, but like kind of a bigger thing, something that like I'm super into, and something super niche, uh, Tarzan novels or fucking you know, Plan 9, Ed Wood movies. That I will have no one. I have no one to talk to about any of that stuff. And then one day I'll wake up and every junior high kid from here to the eastern seaboard is going to want to talk to me about it. And I'm going to go, where the hell did this come from? My point being, the cassette's coming back. Never in a million fucking years. I might have gone on this rant already, but yeah, if you had told me when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, that something that I take for granted now would come back in a big way, it would go away and then come back, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. That's kind of what my records collection is. If you told me there'd be cassette tapes, I'd say, you're out of your fucking mind. I only use cassettes because I couldn't strap my record player to my back and put my headphones on and walk down to the mall, or to the bus stop, to the mall, to the comic book store. So, I mean, I had to use, but in the instant I could get rid of cassettes. I never liked CDs, but I did eventually, after they were dead, when you were able to like burn CDs. And I was like, okay, well, now that I can control what's on the CD, it still sounded like shit to me, frankly, but now everything's digitized, so I'm not going to pull any kind of audiophile card now. So I'm just waiting. I hope it's an Ed Wood thing. I hope Ed Wood gets popular again. And all the kids at the high school across the street will one day see me in my Plan 9 shirt or something to that effect and be like, huh. Who knows? Speaking of nostalgia for childhood, though, that's where the next two books come in. First up, I'll go do this one. Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, Ewoks. I love Ewoks. And if you don't, racist. Okay, so this is the 40th, get the fuck out of here, 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, which was the first Star Wars film I ever saw in the theater, at least while I was old enough to realize that's what I was doing. So they did, a couple weeks ago, Mark Guggenheim wrote Jabba's Palace one, which I did read. I finally caught up and everything. I'll get to that, I guess. Great stuff. I honestly, I don't know why I didn't have it. I don't think I talked about it. So this one I will. They're doing the Ewoks next. I don't know what they are. They're going to do a couple. They're like oversized one shots. Lando, the Empire, the Rebellion, Max Rebo, who, of course, is the band leader at Jabba's Palace. So this is a conversation I was having with my boss today, in fact. Star Wars nerds are worse than comic book nerds. I don't think anyone's going to argue with me on that. As far as wanting to keep everything exactly how it was, like their childhood's preserved in amber. And there's just a million reasons that's stupid. For one thing, George Lucas shit all over my childhood preserved in amber with those fucking special editions that came out in the late '90s, and now are the only things available on your Disney Plus. So I tried to watch Jedi, or I did watch Jedi a while ago, and all this extra footage. What the fuck is this? It's like if you painted a Misfits T-shirt onto the Mona Lisa. Sure, I'd be interested, but I'd also be like, I don't think you should do that. Another one though is the original one. The criticism of Star Wars that I've always hated, and that comes from Star Wars nerds, is about the Ewoks. I was 6 when Return of the Jedi came out, so the Ewoks to me were a perfect delight. So I'm arguing from childhood stance, but for one thing, the flimsy ass argument that anybody I've ever heard take this up is that the Ewoks were cashing in on just trying to be cute so they can make more toys. And it's like, honey, I don't know how to break this to you. They've all been about the toys. Are you kidding me? They're now they're gonna start with the Ewoks trying. You know what? We should really cash in on this. No, man, from fucking Jump Street. It's a fucking Star Wars is a toy commercial, and if that bothers you, I don't give a shit. But I mean, you shouldn't get so up on your high horse. Oh, the Ewoks. Secondly, the Ewoks are clearly representative of natural agrarian societies versus evil technological empires. You need a fucking picture drawn for you. I mean, I don't want to insult anyone who's not white by comparing the Ewoks to other peoples who have fought against invaders, mostly white and with English accents. And even though the technological behemoth that is the Empire has the numbers and has the technology, a bunch of little furry guys with slingshots, etc., and logs defeated them. That's good. That's not a bad. That's God, it makes me so. Ugh. So many brave Ewoks died at the Battle of Endor 2, and to have you piss on their memory like I won't sit here. I'm not going to say another word about it. There was one more PS. There was a great series in the early 2000s called Star Wars Tales, and it was an oversized anthology, 64 pages every issue. I think it was quarterly. They are very hard to get your hands on now because they were published at a time that nobody gave a crap, so there wasn't a whole lot of them made. There was, it went on for a few years, but not very high print runs. Great stuff though, and I did buy a few back then. And there's one I wish I could remember. There's a 1-page story about the Ewoks, and it shows them just in the first panel, farming, and then in the second panel, stormtroopers show up, and then at the end of the thing, there's only helmets left. That's the other thing, dude. The Ewoks, you want to fuck with the Ewoks, dude? You think those speeder bike guys think the Ewoks are just cute and little fun? No, they fucking clothesline that guy. Go ask that speeder bike pilot or driver or rider, whatever the hell they're called. Ask him. You can't because his trachea is crushed. All right. Thank you. Speaking of childhood, I also got this week Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Usagi Yojimbo, Where When. This is not the first crossover between these two properties. In fact, I think I've said this before, but I love Usagi Yojimbo. This is the main reason I bought this. I loved the Ninja Turtles when I was a kid too, but my interest in that particular franchise is, not what it once was, certainly. But Usagi Yojimbo, created by Stan Sakai, he became like Usagi Yojimbo was on the cartoon, and there was an action figure of him. And Stan Sakai still owns the character. So what that means is that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, at the height of their powers in the late 80s, early 90s, when they were gajillionaires, I mean, I'm sure they still are, but they had a lot of power back then too, because they were the creators. One of the earliest, indie creators to really break like this. And so they said, "Hey, put our buddy Stan's bunny character into our cartoon and make a toy out of him and give him a bajillion dollars, or we walk." I'm sure it wasn't like an ultimatum like that, but they got him, and they're like, "He's not. He's gonna own it still," which I'm pretty sure Eastman and Laird still own the Ninja Turtles too, for that matter. And it worked. I'm sure that was a huge payday for Stan Sakai. Not that Stan Sakai can't make a living just on his own with the cartoons and the comics and stuff, but man, what a nice thing for Eastman and Laird to do. And so they still work together occasionally. I don't remember when the last time these two met, but I'm looking forward to reading this one. All right, I got it. Beep, ba, ba, ba. That was this, and now we're on this. All right, so we'll start with the actual picks of last week, and then get to the non-actual. All right, so first up, Codename Ric Flair. Pretty much exactly what I thought it was going to be. A lot of fun. Don't have much more to say on it. If I weren't in a hurry, I'd probably birdwalk a little, but I have, frankly, I got better shit. That's not true. This was great. Hairball #1. This is more of a horror book. I think I might have uh, inferred that it was crime or something, but no, it's pretty much a horror book. And Tyler and Hillary Jenkins did do Fear Case and Matt Camp. They also did a book called Grass Kings for Boom. I guess this would have been about 7 years ago, which I bought the first few and I just couldn't get into it. But Fear Case I liked, and this I like a lot too. This is about a young lady who has been adopted, and her parents turn out to be kind of shitty. And the hairball here, her adopted stray cat. Well, did you ever see the Talkie Tina episode of The Twilight Zone? It's kind of in that. So the best part about this, besides it being super killer, so if you'll recall last week, I think I was expressing some disappointment that this was going to take place during the more recent films, like in that era, and it is. But because they're making another one, another fucking Planet of the Apes trilogy. I'm sorry for all the swearing, but I'm very excited. I was so after reading this, I was so excited. I went and bought that trilogy because I didn't have. I had Dawn of the Planet of the Apes on digital video disc, but not the other two, Rise and War. And in fact, I haven't seen War since I saw it in the theater right down the street. Ugh, just give it to me more and more and more. I watched of the three new ones. I watched uh, Rise. Or was Rise first and then Dawn? No, I think Rise is second. The second movie, and it's still my favorite. It's my absolute favorite after the original. It might even be. I might even like it more the original in some way. Certainly, super violent and like all the stuff. Planet of the Apes has always been a very thinly veiled criticism of human behavior, and I can't get enough of it because, as it turns out, I hate people. Koba was right. That's all I'm trying to say. All right, and then I had been like about I want to say 2 or 3 weeks behind, but I was able to catch up. My baby mama and baby should go visit her family more often. Get a lot more comic reading. I'm kidding, of course. They're coming back tomorrow. I can't wait to eat the baby. But yeah, I got all caught up, which is good because this week was like 2 weeks worth in one go. So this is a book that I hadn't even anticipated buying. This is the Unstoppable Doom Patrol #1. This was great. I've only had passing familiarity with Doom Patrol. I have the Grant Morrison omnibus, but I have not read it still. That's the most famous one. I think it was last year, maybe the year before. I read some of the original Doom Patrol from the '60s when it was just trying to be the X-Men. But what I didn't realize even after I bought it, was I was like, oh, I'll give Doom Patrol. I always will give Doom Patrol a chance, even though I haven't read a ton of it. But it's also drawn by Chris Burnham, who's a great artist that I often confuse with Gary Erskine. He's not Gary Erskine. He's Chris Burnham, and he's great. He did, I guess his biggest thing was Batman and Batman Incorporated, or Batman and Robin. It was when Grant Morrison was writing every Batman title, and he drew one of them, and it was great. But he's done some other goofy stuff. I looked at his bibliography, but I couldn't really. None of it jumped out at me. I was like, "There's another one." Yeah. And speaking of artists I love, I also read The Ambassadors #1. I didn't bother talking about this, I think, in the first place because it was just another Mark Millar book. But what I kept not seeing, because they run these ads in all the Millar books, is drawn by fucking Frank Whiteley, who hasn't drawn anything in a very long time. Because Frank Whiteley takes forever to draw anything. He's very meticulous, and it's worth it every time. Jupiter's Legacy might be the last thing he did, and that was eons ago. I can't think of anything between the two, though. In fact, the original Jupiter's Legacy series was like a year late in between a couple issues because Wiley just takes forever. So I'm pretty sure by now, I would hope they figured out by now to just let him draw the whole thing and then start publishing it. I think what's his name does Shaolin Cowboy by Jeff Darrow. I'm pretty sure Jeff Darrow draws the whole series before he starts to let the publishers put it out, because otherwise we'll be waiting years. That was how the first series was, but the last few Shaolin Cowboy series have been monthly because he'll take 5 or 6 years to draw it first, which I think is great. But this is and it's you know, it's a pretty fun premise. 6 people on the whole planet can have superpowers. First one is a nice gal from South Korea, as you can tell by her flag costume. But it's Frank Wiley is the star of the show. So much so that in fact there is another. The second issue of this came out this week, as did the 4th issue of Nemesis Reloaded. And my boss told me that nobody's buying both of them. People who are buying the Ambassadors are not reading Nemesis, and people who are reading Nemesis aren't reading the Ambassador. Ah, shit. I know it's terrible. You can't really tell, but I can't recommend this or the work of Frank Wiley enough. And he and Morrison have also worked together. Oh, I wonder, because Morrison and Millar are not friends. So I wonder if that makes it weird. But yeah, it's good. All right, I'm gonna stop. This has frankly been going on far too long. I'm gonna stop the whole thing.